The dividing line from a resident and a citizen, what is it now? It used to be monumental. It was, you can't hold an office unless you're a citizen. I think that's been under attack. I can't vote unless you can vote in some board elections in Massachusetts and California if you're not a citizen. You cannot qualify for entitlements, that's gone. Only a citizen has the permission to leave his country and come back at will. But now it's just the opposite. I come into SFO and I don't have a passport. I go into a little room and I'm in trouble. I go fly into Mexico City and I cross the border, I can do it with impunity. So those barriers or divides, or whatever term we use, have dissipated. They no longer exist.
The population cannot exercise its rights without material security that only the economic self-reliance and autonomy of the middle class ensure, close quote. And you illustrate this point by talking about the democracy of ancient Greece, where only those with a certain degree of property, not the very rich, but they had to have some property, were permitted to participate in the assembly. Today, I'm continuing to quote you, today the modern suburban everyman is becoming a nostalgic ideal rather than a vibrant reality. Indeed, the middle class, the American middle class, has lost economic ground for nearly half a century. So explain, during this half a century, by one economist's measure after another, the country's gotten richer. Yes. So you don't mean just, I mean, we all have iPhones that we didn't used to have. So what do you mean? What do you mean by this?
I'm saying that while we have these appurtenances and we can call Nigeria or Moscow, and we couldn't do that with $1 million 30 years ago, I understand that. But I'm talking about the ability to function within a society in an autonomous fashion. So if you're a young person, you get your sociology major, and what do? You have $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 in debt. $1.7 trillion in debt. And if you die in
student debt.
Yes, student debt. The average person dies with about a net worth of $10,000 and about $10,000 in credit card debt. So you're not creating people who are going to say to wealthy people, I want to be very careful that these very powerful, influential people do not leverage, warp, massage government action. I'm quoting almost Aristotle now. And you don't want people who are very impoverished to say to the government, I need a subsidy. So you've got these middle people that said, I don't need the government and I don't need wealthy people. I'm an independent person. I'm going to audit my elected officials. I'm going to speak out if I disagree with General Milley. If I don't like Anthony Fauci's policy, I'm going to say so. I'm not worried about the government retaliating to me. I'm not worried about a Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates. He can't hurt me. I'm an independent. And yet what do we have? It's what Tocqueville was brilliant in Democracy in America. He said that basically he forecast what would happen when you had an entitlement state. You'd have a prolonged adolescence. So what are we doing now? If you look at the first age of marriage, 23 to 29, first child, about 26 to 30.
Over what period of time? Over the last 20
about
years?
50 years. 50
okay.
years. And then buying a house, we were making progress. 63%, it's going down, and the age is going up. And so we're having these people, I guess Obama knew something that we didn't when he had the pajama boy commercial and The Life of Julia, that we were creating dependent people upon government or the largesse of wealthy people.
An infantilized population.
It was very valuable.
Cell phones or not, does not make for citizens.
They're not independent. And just to finish on the middle class, I was very lucky that I was a classic student because that's central, the mesoi, or central to the experience of civic government and consensual government, and they're mentioned everywhere in classical literature, Roman and Greek literature. But I've also lived in California, and it's a medieval society of rich and poor with the highest poverty rate in the United States.
When you were a boy growing up on the family ranch in Selma, what was California like?
No, it was an
agrarian... I mean, honestly, I don't mean... California was wonderful in the 50s, so but I'm not... What was it actually like?
It was an agrarian grid. The average farm size where we lived was about 60 acres. There was a house and a family, and they were in the PTA, they were on the hospital board, they were the Little League coaches, there was a community.
Those 60 acres were there?
Yes, and we would say poor people, they were not very wealthy, but they were wealthy in a different sense. They had their own food, they canned them, we dried tomatoes for we had them all winter, we had grape juice, we did everything. And we were outspoken, we didn't care what the wealthy thought of us. We didn't want anything to do with the poor. And there was a natural diversity. There was a Greek American family. There was a Mexican American family. There was the Armenian family. There was a Japanese. No one cared because they were
Because
all
everybody had
autonomous.
standing.
Yeah,
Right.
and they were all autonomous. And yet now that same grid, I'm the last person of that neighborhood.
Replaced by
By very efficient,
super big ag.
vast corporate farms, and I rent mine out to a corporate farm, my little 40 acres, and the houses are now rented to very impoverished people. So we're plagued with gangs and crime, and there's no sense of community. And that's California. We've had about 8 to 10 million people leave the state who were middle class. We had an open border. We're very impoverished, hardworking, but impoverished people came under illegal auspices. And then we had the highest concentration of wealth in the history of civilization in Silicon Valley. $5 trillion a few miles from where we're speaking right now of market capitalization. And so you can see that it's a coastal elite, and then it's a vast peasantry in the interior and the foothills, Northern California.
The erosion of borders. The dying citizen, once again. States must privilege citizens over mere residents, and citizens must live within established borders sharing, here's that marvelous phrase of yours again, must live within established borders sharing a sacred physical space, close quote. The trouble today, again, the dying citizen, we now live in an increasingly borderless world, close quote. Borderless, I get the borderless because you turn on the television and you can see streams of people from the south not being, I don't know what the word, well, they're streaming
2 million
across,
this fiscal year?
Right, streaming across the southern border. But you mean more than that.
Yeah.
You said a moment ago, we can call Nigeria or Moscow on our cell phone. There's some sense of a loss of, part of the problem is tech. No, yes, no, I'm trying to feel my way
absolutely. And this has some relevance for the last chapter on globalization. What we were saying is that the communications eroded time and space. So you could go somewhere or you could speak somewhere and there was a uniformity of culture, I get that. But in reaction to that, the physical borders in Europe, but especially in the United States southern border and places in Asia started to collapse. And people got angry because the first thing they discovered is when people migrated across, usually for economic reasons, and they did so en masse, often under illegal auspices, often without capital or skills, then they became wards of the state. And they added to the subsidies that were required to give them parity when we're enlightened societies, and the taxes burden on the middle class, and wages fell, that were on the middle class wages fell, and crime arose. It's just a fact. And more importantly, when you meet somebody at the barber shop, and you meet somebody, you know, at the hospital, emergency room, and they're not a citizen, and they're not here legally, or they're not even a legal resident, what do you have in common, other than your basic humanity? You say, what did you think of 4th of July this weekend? Who's your favorite president? Are you going to be a Little League coach? And there's a foreignness there. And it's okay if it's a small minority of the population. But when you have 40 to 50 million people that were not born in the United States, some of them are legal residents, some of them have been naturalized, a lot haven't. Or 27% of the state of California were not born in the United States. Again, some legal residents. Some,
right.
Then you're encountering too many people that don't have the common shared civic reinforcement. And so when you ask them, what do you think of the Electoral College? Or what do you think of getting rid of the 9-person Supreme Court? Or what do you think of outlawing gas lawnmowers in California? Or do you like the 99 being the most dangerous highway in the United States in California? You're met with a blank stare. I don't know what you think. Ask me a question about Oaxaca and I can tell you.
Right.
So and when you add it finally, Peter, to the host, we're the host, and we used to say, you chose to come in. We didn't ask you. You chose to have a different paradigm from where you left. And we're going to have a brutal bargain. You're going to assimilate you. We're going to integrate you. We're going to intermarry. We're going to make you a perfect American. And if you do this, you have just as much right as somebody who came across on the Mayflower, as Teddy Roosevelt said. 7 generations mean nothing. You are the equal to the daughters of the Revolution.
Right. Right.
And now we say, you know, who are we to judge? Who are we to say that our system is better than theirs? Hello, they left. They're theirs. They forsake it. They're here.